Students, we ended by working steps 1 and 2, and we will now work on steps 3 and 4 in our journal entry. Remember, the second part of this problem asks us to make a journal entry to transfer the dollar values associated with the 600,000 units to the baking department. Okay, the first thing we're going to do, we know the equivalent units because you'll remember that up here we calculated the materials equivalent units and the conversion costs. So we're going to bring these down, 870 and 750. I'll also make another header here so that you can see what we're talking about here. Now, costs in April, we're going to come back and look. We started with direct materials cost of 150 and we added 300,000. So I'm going to take 150,000 plus the 300,000. For conversion costs, I'm going to come back and see that we started with 50,000 and we added an additional 300,000. Remember, conversion costs are direct labor and manufacturing overhead. So I will take 50,000 plus, excuse me, I got to come back. I will take 50,000 plus the 300,000 from here and here. So 50,000 plus 100,000 plus 200,000. And I can total up these by adding the 450 and the 350. Now I'm going to dark shade this cell because we aren't going to put anything in there. We do now need to calculate the unit cost for materials and conversion for these units. So I will take 450 divided by the 870,000 units, and the materials cost per equivalent unit is about 52 cents. And I'll do the same thing here for conversion. I show about 47 cents here. And how do I total it? I do the same thing. I just need to add these together. There's a lot of errors here on the past exam. Don't try to reinvent this average over here. You just take the take this plus this equals this. Now, what does this tell us? This tells us that for each equivalent unit, it costs us about 98 cents in the processing department. Remember, this is the processing department. It's one of 3 WIP departments, and we're calculating the dollar values of the equivalent units. So here, this is just a quick reconciliation of our dollars. You can notice that our WIP, we started with $200,000. And we started into production $800,000. Excuse me, $600,000 for a total of 800,000. Whoop. One too many zeros there. So, if I total these two together, we have $800,000. Now, you'll notice that if I highlight this one, we have a match here. Does the total costs in our unit cost calculation match the total costs that are in play from WIP and new costs introduced in April? The answer is true. It's yes. If these don't match up, we've got a problem. Now, when we look at step 4 here, we're trying to find out the dollar value of the units that were transferred out and the dollar value of WIP. How do I do this? Well, I know that $600,000 was transferred out, and I know the unit cost per equivalent unit. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to say 600,000 times 98 cents. Now here, materials, I need to take, this is materials for WIP, right? This is the remaining units. Now, you'll remember I have 270,000 equivalent units for materials. And if you're asking me why don't I take the 870, the answer is because we've already accounted for the transferred units here. So I'll take the 270 times the materials unit cost, and then I will take the equivalent units for conversion cost times the unit cost for per equivalent unit for conversion. If I add these together, this is now the dollar value in WIP at the end of the month. And if I add these two together, the transferred out dollars that were transferred to baking and the WIP, I get $800,000. 800,000, 800,000, and we match. We've accounted for all of our costs throughout the schedule. Now, we are to the point where we can do the second part of the problem. We've completed the 4-step production cost report. Why did we need to do the production cost report? Because we needed to be able to find out our equivalent units, which we calculated in step 2, and then our unit cost per equivalent unit for materials conversion. And then we know the dollar value that we're transferring out, which is $590,345 for these 600,000 units that we've transferred out. If I put this journal entry in here, I debit WIP baking and I credit WIP processing. That makes sense. I need to lower the WIP processing and increase baking because we've transferred it to baking. You'll remember we're doing the processing department, and it goes from the processing department to baking to fulfillment. So what's the dollar entry here? $590, $345. That's the amount we're going to transfer. And the journal entry is going to be made at the end of the month for the purposes of this problem. Now, corporate manufacturers are doing this on a daily basis through softwares and such, but this gives us visibility into the movement of these costs. Now, if I were to make a note to this, I would say costs transferred from processing to baking for 600,000 transferred units. This completes our production cost report and the journal entry required to move these costs to the next WIP department or eventually to finished goods. This concludes the problem.